Hello everybody, it's Corey and welcome to the West Ham My YouTube channel. This is the Predicted 11 and score prediction video for the Everton versus West Ham United game. And listen, it was a good win against Southampton. I've made my piece about the team selection. I would like Moyes to take off that handbrake a little bit more. And certainly, I think this game against Everton is going to be tough. The low block that they can play, the athleticism of some of their midfielders, as well as the continual threat of Dominic Calvert Lewin and the return of Richarlison means that West Ham can't really switch off in this game. And I think it could be a game that we have to take the impetus in. We have to try and press Everton to create chances, but fair play, Carlo Ancelotti. He's put in a number of systems throughout this season to try and get the best from his players, and he's settled on one that I think gives him a lot of defensive security. And of course, he relies on Calvert Lewin. This side would be a different side without Calvert Lewin. He's very, very much built towards his strength, so he's definitely someone we're going to have to be aware of. Let's get into the predicted 11 for Everton. Then in goal, it's Jordan Pickford. It is, of course. Listen, I think he does get a bad rap. I think in terms of his decision-making, when to make a save, when to come out, it is very poor. I've seen that consistently throughout the season. I think his reflexes are very good. He does make some decent shot stops. And his distribution as well from goal kicks is absolutely fantastic. And I think earlier in the season with that wing-back system, it suited Everton massively. And you can see why Carlo persisted with him. He's been in and out of side. Olsen's come in a few times to give him a little bit of a rest. I can completely understand that. I want West Ham to put this guy under pressure from set pieces. Try and force him into making that decision. Because I think you look at the in-swinger from Creswell that we've always got on offer. Declan Rice as well, showing his ability now from set pieces. I think West Ham could put some significant pressure on them. Of course, their centre-backs, which has become essentially a back four of centre-backs, means that it's very, very difficult for West Ham to break them down, and they're all very good in the air. So it will be a tough one. Particularly to put him under pressure, but there's no reason why West Ham can't do with the players that we've got, even with the return of Mikel Antonio. Right back for Everton will be Mason Holgate. I don't really want to dig him out because I actually think at centre-back he's very mobile, he's very good on the ball, he's composed, he got a goal against Leicester from a set piece again, which is what Everton are relying on at the moment without that kind of natural creativity and the wing-back system that allows them to push forward on teams. He won't progress. Both him and Godfrey will not progress unless Everton have possession. In transition, you will not see their fullbacks push up. And I think it gives West Ham an avenue. And it gives us a little bit of defensive solidity. We always worry, and particularly, with Creswell against Theo Walcott in the last game, the pressure that they put on him in terms of the overloads and that wing back pushing on. And Kyle Walker-Peters gave us some real issues. It won't be the same in this game. Obviously, Everton will use their midfielders in Sigurdsson and Doucoure to put pressure on our back four and try and get that ball into somebody like a Calvert Lewin. But I think Holgate, you won't see too much of him in this game. I think he's someone we can get out from that position. It is going to be tough. He'll tuck in as well. Him and Godfrey will tuck in, particularly when West Ham have possession. And look out for the midfielders because they will sit in alongside the centre-backs and allow someone like a Holgate to go and press if West Ham try and use the width in this game. So whilst it's easy to sit here and say that he's not the most mobile and not a natural fullback, I think Carlo Ancelotti has got his spot on in using his midfielders to help him out and also to relinquish him a little bit of that offensive duty. Mina will slip in on that right-hand side. Again, Mina, a huge physical presence, will try and play out from the back, less so than someone like a Michael Keane, but I'm impressed with him in terms of the air. I think even if Allan plays or Antonio plays, I think that physical battle could be really, really interesting to see. But again, like I said, Carlo's got his spot on. He's using his centre midfielders, in particular Tom Davies and Doucoure, to slot back in and protect them because he realises they're not the most mobile. When we saw that wing-back system, particularly where he pushed on Lucas Digne and Coleman earlier on in the season, Michael Keane and Mina were getting exploited quite a bit, particularly with movement down the middle. And I think in this system, with two defensive midfielders slotting in either side, a tactic that Mourinho uses at Spurs, it works perfectly for them and it actually allows them to utilise their strong abilities in the air. So again, it's going to be a tough one from West Ham to try and get in behind. I think they can be got in behind, and I will explain that when we get to the West Ham 11. But again, very impressive so far this season. Michael Keane offers more offensively than possibly people give him credit for. He hasn't been exploited too many times this season, and again, that is because of Everton's system. Defensively, they're very good. I guess he's the one that will come out and he will step out from that back and he'll try and hit a switch ball for Calvert Lewin. Now, in the Carabao Cup, it was something that we got exploited with, particularly with that back four. And against Southampton for the first 10 minutes, when West Ham try and press as a team, the balls over the top were really concerning from a mobility standpoint. I'd like Antonio to start in this game to try and put pressure on him. If we do play that 4-2-3-1 for the attacking midfielders to push a little bit higher and stop Everton playing out from the back and using that switch ball, that is something that can catch West Ham off guard. We did adapt very nicely to that against Southampton, but it is something we should be aware of because you look at Everton, and I think in terms of creativity, they're struggling. They're lacking a little bit at the moment, and the lack of width is hurting them. And from a defensive perspective, it does make it easier for West Ham. So expect Everton to try and hit that ball a couple of times in this game and catch us off guard. Ben Godfrey at left back. Again, not a natural left back at all, but I was impressed to see him at Sheffield United getting in beyond and using Bernard and creating an overlap. He's probably a little bit more mobile than Holgate from what I've seen. Very, very good in the air, composed in possession, fantastic distribution from a centre-back position. Again, though, I think he will only get forward as Mason Holgate will get forward if Everton have significant pressure on West Ham and they're in our final third. And again, I'm not convinced they can hurt us that much. I think for Soufal, obviously the main concern is Richarlison that will keep the width on that side. So I expect Godfrey to sit back a little bit. Now, particularly with the two fullbacks, when they're out of position or when they're under the cosh, they will slot in to create almost a back three at times. And the opportunities for West Ham to get in behind really can only come from wide areas. So West Ham really needs to use the width and get forward. And I'd like to see Bowen, possibly Ben Rama later on in the game, pushing wide and trying to stretch this really strong Everton low block. But again, look, their back four has been impressive for what it is. There are four centre-backs and they do form a very central unit, particularly when they're under the cosh and the other team has possession in their third. This guy is going to play the pivot, from what I understand. Again, Allan's been really good for them this season. I think he's offered them a little bit of defensive security against teams that will play with three attacking midfielders. Manchester United, the perfect example. Bruno Fernandes picking up those holes. They have struggled. They obviously give a lot of responsibility on someone like Allan to try and press that ball and win it. If he doesn't, and there are runners in behind and runners either side of him, again, he can get exploited quite a bit. But Tom Davies will fit this role. And he did so, and he has done for the previous few games with Fabian Delph and Allan out. He'll slot in, he'll just play just in front of those two centre-backs. He'll try and distribute it into the likes of Sigurdsson, who will play as a 10 in this game, or Doucoure, that will act as an additional runner. And I'll get on to explain Doucoure's defensive work rate as well. I think against Manchester United, when they tried to put the pressure on them, he slotted into a back four, not his natural position. I don't expect him to get forward in this game, but what I do expect him is to relinquish a lot of space in front of that back four. I think that's been Everton's weakness this season. And fair play to Carlo for all of his hard work defensively and getting that shape right. He will concede a lot of ground in midfield, so it will be up to someone like a Rice or a Souček to use their mobility to drive the ball forward and for West Ham to get numbers forward in this game to hurt and stretch Everton. But he won't be a player that will push out. I can't really see him past that halfway line, if I'm honest. And he'll just give that little bit of security to the two centre-backs that we know can get turned with a bit of pace in behind. So let's get on to this man, because I really want to talk about this guy because he has been super impressive. And I think as West Ham fans, before the Souček and Rice partnership, he was someone that we looked at and said, this is a box-to-box midfielder. It is, of course, Abdoulaye Doucoure. I really rate him, and I think he's such a functional player in terms of his athleticism, the work rate defensively that he can do. He's played in that pivot position for Carlo Ancelotti and arguably supports those two centre-backs a little bit better than Tom Davies. But what's interesting from a last third perspective is he will try and get beyond and create almost a second striker role for Dominic Calvert Lewin, who you'll see will try and stretch the play, come out to the wide areas, hold it up and introduce the midfield. And I think Doucoure offers another attacking element to Everton's play that possibly they lack without a natural number 10. I know Sigurdsson is in there, but James Rodriguez is slightly different and the system is different. So Doucoure will play in advanced roles at times. He will push forward in front of Tom Davies. He'll look to carry the ball. He is that athleticism in that Everton midfield. It will be a real test for West Ham to try and nullify this guy, even in terms of the back four, because it's easy to sit there and say that he's played a multitude of midfield positions, but he will get into that final third. He will make those late runs and he will look to support Dominic Calvert Lewin. And I think if West Ham are switched on against him, we can nullify him. We can stop him offensively. Defensively, he does a fantastic job and he really supports those centre-backs. He'll sit in with them. He'll support them. The athleticism he has to cover any kind of mobility in behind was crucial against Chelsea in the result they got. I know they got the result from a penalty, but certainly that low block, he's crucial too as well. To stop him, this isn't a man-marking job. He will have space and he will have time, but I think the space that he will vacate and just the way that pivot plays in this Everton system, if West Ham can break with the ball, you're asking him questions to get back in time. But having said that, I think when Everton are out of possession and a team is on transition, they will throw numbers back. Calvert Lewin will sit on the edge of his penalty area. And I think that's how Everton have been able to grind out results most recently. This guy was almost a forgotten guy, not only at Everton, but in the Premier League. It's Gylfi Sigurdsson. And I think Everton and Carlo, it remained to be seen whether he would fit in the side. And obviously when Rodriguez come in, it was very unlikely that he was going to start most games. But I think Carlo likes him. I think the way he uses him in terms of the press, I think when they're out of possessions, expect to see both him and Dominic Calvert Lewin try and push our two centre-backs and possibly our two pivots as well. The role that he gives to him is very much a free role. And you don't really see it in the Premier League these days. Number 10's being given a free role because a lot of teams are functional. But Gylfi Sigurdsson is given that role to get in and work with Dominic Calvert Lewin, whether it's alongside in terms of the press, whether it's trying to play the ball through to him, whether it's trying to link up play with him and hold that ball in the final third. Interestingly enough, Carlo knows he doesn't have the pace to hurt teams in transition. That's why he uses Doucoure. But expect that if Everton do get the ball and they're able to pin West Ham back, he will get the freedom on the edge of the penalty area to either try and link up with a Dominic Calvert-Lewin or hit shots from range. And he is fantastic from that. Deliveries, set pieces, we know his strengths. And I think this side works to that strength and it gives him the freedom in terms of that final movement. And he's willing to press as well, which means that we can look at him and say, well, possibly he's not the most mobile player, but functionally he gives a little bit of support to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, particularly when they're trying to get that ball back and in that turnover. So again, fair play to Carlo. He's got a tune out of him, and I expect him to pick up the ball. It's going to be a tough game because I think Declan Rice and Thomas Souček will defensively make it difficult for him to try and get in. They'll press him as well. We won't sit back like a Tom Davies will in that pivot for Everton. Both Declan Rice and Souček will try and win that ball. And I think it could be a tough afternoon for somebody like a Gylfi Sigurdsson because he lacks the pace as well. So hopefully we can nullify. But listen, a dangerous player, you cannot give him the time. On the left-hand side, Richarlison will be back. He has been absent for a few games. The interesting thing about this, I've kind of set it up a little bit like a 4-3-3. At times it feels like a 4-2-3-1. Richarlison is that side, will keep the width. And that is the concern. I think we look at teams that can try and stretch West Ham and pull us out of position. Richarlison is happy to do that. He's happy to be direct. I think earlier in the season, you saw him play almost like a secondary striker to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which I think contributed to a lot of Everton's high-scoring performances. But now you're seeing him in that sort of wide area, picking the ball up. He'll keep it. He can beat a man. It's going to be a real intriguing battle between him and Soufal if he comes back in, because I think Richarlison offers so much directness, pace, shots from distance that we saw against Leicester. I think he proposes a different issue. I've sat here and said that I think Everton's play is very, very central at the moment. They rely on Calvert-Lewin to stretch it. But when you add someone like Richarlison in again, it could pull us out of position. And you just feel that maybe if Declan has to go over and possibly cover for Soufal, again, if Souček has to go and cover for a Creswell, that maybe Everton can find that space, particularly from that 10 position, and hurt West Ham. But he's the guy to get behind other than someone like a Calvert-Lewin. So keep your eye out for him. Alex Iwobi has played in a multitude of positions again for Carlo Ancelotti, and he's kind of got a tune out of him, to be fair. He's different from Richarlison in the way that he won't keep the width. He'll try and come in central. He'll try and dribble and take on a man. I think it suits West Ham from a defensive perspective. As good as a dribbler as he is and a competent dribbler as he is on the ball, he won't try and stretch and he won't really look to target someone like an Aaron Creswell. I think if we were looking from a different perspective for a more natural right winger that would take him on directly on the outside, Creswell could struggle here. And you'd be asking questions, particularly of the two pivots. But Iwobi will come central. I think we've got enough to deal with him in terms of Thomas Souček and that defensive work rate. But again, a danger. We'll put pressure and we'll look to try and find Calvert-Lewin, this team is built for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And so expect him to try and create, but don't expect him to try and get him behind. He has got pace about him and he has played that wing-back position, but this system, he'll try and come a little bit central, and Richarlison will keep the width on that left-hand side. And I've said it continually throughout this because he is the biggest threat that Everton have with James out. It is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. What a striker. And I think when we look at Michail Antonio in our side, in terms of open play, hold-up play, stretching it, linking up, Calvert-Lewin does that for Everton. And I think his finishing has improved massively. This team is geared towards him. Ancelotti's essentially given him a number 10 to get and support him when they've got possession and they've got the press. He's given him Doucoure in transition where he's got a bit of athleticism beside him so he can try and link up. But the play relies on Calvert-Lewin's ability to try and stretch. He can come a little bit deeper. He can pose an issue to both Declan Rice and Souček. I think in the Carabao Cup, he got the better of Balbuena on that left-hand side because of his mobility in behind. I would not be surprised if at times you saw him popping up on that right-hand side to give Creswell a few issues and try and introduce Doucoure as an additional runner in there. You could look at him as well in terms of if Everton have possession and Sigurdsson has the ball, could he possibly try and stretch and get in between Balbuena and Ogbonna? He's fantastic in the air. I mean, and I think West Ham have been good in the air in recent weeks, but his movement generally could throw us off. I think against strikers that have decent movement and we're a little bit impatient maybe with a Balbuena in that side, it would be a huge concern, because I think if you give Calvert-Lewin, and what we've seen is if you give him one chance, he tends to score, and he's such a massive threat. I'm not really sure how you deal with him. If I'm honest, I think you've got to be disciplined. I think you've got to be aware of it. I think you have to sit off. He's the guy that will try and stretch and get in behind. And if he can get in behind, I expect Everton to have enough in that box to try and create something. If you can nullify him, keep him quiet, their play in terms of introducing it is very much restricted towards the edge of the box, and you feel that Rice and Souček will be able to deal with that. Now, let's get on to the West Ham side. There has to be a change for me. There has to be more attacking impetus. I think West Ham defensively actually look better when we have more pace and more mobility in that attacking three and in that striker role. And it isn't a criticism on Allan, because I think he did well in the last game as well as he could have done. His pressing has improved. His overall link-up play's improved. But this isn't... I think it's a tough league for him. I think it's tough for him to give us an outlet in this side. But I think defensively, we look so much better in playing that low block when we have pace to hit teams on the counter. And you look at Everton's midfield as a weak spot, and I expect the athleticism of Souček to try and drive into there, and possibly even a number 10 to find space. And we need width as well, and we need pace on those wings to hurt teams and to hurt Everton, because if we're unable to hit them in transition quick enough, they will get bodies back. They will put both Tom Davies and Doucoure in between the two centre-backs, create an incredibly difficult low block to break down, and also allow someone like a Holgate or Godfrey to come wide. So it has to be quick. We have to use it. We have to be decisive. And we have to try and dominate that space that Everton will vacate in that midfield when they lose the ball. So getting into the West Ham side, in goal, Lucas Fabianski, no surprises there. I think he's going to have a real test in switching on for a Calvert-Lewin. This is the type of game where you feel that Everton offensively can't stretch things too much, but they have enough quality in that final third in Richarlison in terms of his movement, and he can get in behind and stretch it a bit. Sigurdsson gets space on the edge of the box. Dominic Calvert Lewin uses his mobility. There are clutch moments that he has to switch on for. And I think this is a game of concentration. And fair play to Fabianski. I think when he's been called upon this season, he has turned up. We've had games where teams have had a prolonged amount of possession, Manchester City, Liverpool, and he has switched on and he has done the business in those games. So I expect him to do the same in this one. He is going to be under pressure. I look at set pieces as well for Everton as a massive part. The height, the strength in there, the quality of delivery from a Sigurdsson. Again, he has to be 100% concentrated throughout this game, and I've got no doubt that he will. Now, this guy has to play. I mean, again, I thought Fredericks did very well. And I thought it was a very, astute move, I guess, from David Moyes to have a player with such good recovery pace, given the wing-back system and how they would stretch us Southampton. But I would like to see Soufal in here, and the reason why, I think defensively, he is better than Fredericks. Just one-on-one, he's better than Fredericks. And I think there is a serious battle between him and Richarlison. I think what we've seen from Soufal this season is one-on-one, he can get the better. Positionally, he's very, very good. Offensively, he's very good. And I think if there's an opportunity to win that ball off Richarlison, he can carry the ball and get West Ham further up the pitch and exploit the space in behind. And there is an argument as well that he could possibly ask a question of someone like Godfrey down that left. And Godfrey will try and get forward if he can, if Everton are in possession. And I back Soufal to beat him in terms of pace. As mobile as he is for a centre-back, I do look at Soufal and think he is good going forward. So I expect him to come into the side. I expect him to cause Everton issues. And I think there will be a real battle. If he can keep Richarlison quiet and send him a little bit central, I think we can really nullify Everton's threat. And I think we can keep that defensive structure that we need against the Dominic Calvert Lewin. Right-hand side has got to be Balbuena. I know Craig Dawson got a lot of praise for his performance against Southampton, but for me, Balbuena has to come straight back in. I think Dawson was good in the air, okay, and he offered something offensively, and you have to credit him. He's coming against Southampton, a high press side with incredible mobility in both the midfield areas and in the striking areas. A very attack-centric team. I guess maybe it would suit him in some respects that Everton will try and play a little bit on the edge of that box and may not have the mobility, but I really wouldn't take the chance with somebody like a Dominic Calvert Lewin against a Craig Dawson, because I think a bit of pace, and he has more pace for me than Danny Ings and Che Adams, could hurt him. And I think if he switches off or tries to win that ball for 5 seconds, I think Everton can get behind, and you really look at Calvert Lewin as a guy to take those opportunities. So for me, Balbuena has to come back in the side. Said all that, he is actually the more aggressive out of him and Ogbonna, so he will try and go and win the ball. I think aerially he's a bit more switched on. I've seen improvements in his game in terms of trying to win that ball and play out from the back. I'm not saying he's a ball-playing centre-back, but I think his distribution generally has improved. Again, I think he has to play for me. I think him and Ogbonna is the partnership. They've shown that organisation between the two, that communication. They'll have to be protected, of course, from somebody like a Declan Rice at times. The movement of Calvert-Lewin and the additional run of Doucoure will put them under some serious threat. But I fancy West Ham in this system to try and make it difficult for Everton to get in behind. And I think if that's the case, West Ham's structure can stay very, very much the same. And I think there will be an emphasis on that midfield to go and win that ball and carry it forward. I think the defence has got enough with the way that Everton play. Ogbonna, left-hand side, solid as a rock. I think it'll be a test for him aerially, and I'll back him aerially as well, against, Yerry Mina and Keane from set pieces, Doucoure as well, the late run of him. I think he's going to have to be switched on, as I say. Again, I think that communication and the relationship possibly between Balbuena and Ogbonna is crucial in this game, given the threat of a Calvert-Lewin. If Richarlison probably won't come central, but he can try and get in behind and hurt, and maybe Balbuena will have to go and support Soufal. And that communication is absolutely essential. We cannot give Everton too many chances, because I think they will take one. And if they get one goal, you're giving them the impetus to play their low block, which is incredibly hard to break down. So the relationship between the two, I'd back. I think they have to play against Everton. And I think their attributes generally aerially are what is going to protect Fabianski in this game. Let's get on to this man, because I think he got a little bit of criticism. Well, a little bit. I mean, he did get quite a fair bit against Southampton. It is Aaron Cresswell. And I think, listen, I don't think the same questions will be asked of Aaron Cresswell in this game, purely because of the lack of the overlapping fullback that we saw from Everton earlier in the season. If Coleman comes into this side, then possibly we're talking about something different, because he does offer that width, and Iwobi can come central and ask questions of Cresswell whether to go and press or sit back. Generally in this back four, he's asked to sit back and be a little bit more reserved. Against Southampton, because of the way that their wingers come in and play almost like 10s, he had to go and try and meet Theo Walcott, and he got beat a number of times, and the fullback exploited him. It will not be the same. It probably benefits in the fact that Mason Holgate will only get up if Everton are in position. Equally, Iwobi's the guy to come central and try and create something from those pockets just in front of that back four. So it will benefit Cresswell in terms of not being beaten. But that's not being said that if he tries to progress a little bit with this ball, possibly Iwobi will try and pull out to that wide area and notice that space. I think in the second half against Southampton, he got that protection from Fornals that he needed. Possibly could need this in this game. But I would back him enough. I think the only issue I can see is if Calvert-Lewin tries to peel off to that right-hand side and exploits him, in which case possibly Doucoure can get in behind, Richarlison can come central, and all of a sudden that Everton midfield is introduced into the box, and that's a different level. And I think Cresswell has enough in this game to deal with Iwobi, and I think he's got enough protection as well from a Declan Rice. So I'm not too concerned about him. I always say his distribution is fantastic. I think if you can get it to that left-hand side where I would like a bit of pace, I think we can hurt Everton very, very quickly and hurt them out of possession, and pull that centre-back, those four centre-backs apart a bit, and get clear-cut chances that we really need and hopefully will take. In midfield, again, I'm like a broken record. Of course, the same two-star. Declan Rice, let's talk about him. Very, very impressive again against Southampton. I thought his distribution was quality. He's showing more elements to his game in terms of that switch pass that we're going to need. He's going to be under pressure in this game. There's absolutely no doubt. Like I said, I think Everton's style of play benefits West Ham to a degree. I think obviously Sigurdsson will play in those areas. He isn't as mobile, won't try and pull Declan out of position. Iwobi will come central as well. I think positionally it benefits Declan Rice, but I want to see Declan Rice try and win the ball in these areas and then go and use his athleticism to carry the ball forward and hit Everton, because like I've said, Tom Davies in that pivot position, in the way that Everton play, there is a space both between when Doucoure pushes up almost as an 8. Sigurdsson plays in that 10 role to try and get closer to Dominic Calvert Lewin and create something. If Declan Rice wins that ball in those areas, he has to carry it forward. And I think West Ham, if we can get numbers forward alongside Declan Rice or Souček, whoever wins the ball, because they've both got athleticism, West Ham will have a clear-cut chance to hurt Everton. But we have to use the width in this game. I think if we use the width in this game, and I back Declan Rice in terms of his switch passing, we've seen the improvement in his passing over the past 2 years, and in particular this season, his composure on the ball. He makes the right decisions. I think it'll be tough for Everton to get back in position. And I think because they're not natural fullbacks, West Ham could create really good chances for the front man. So again, there's emphasis on him to get forward in this game. I think he's shown that as well. I think he'll make it uncomfortable for Sigurdsson. He'll have a battle with Doucoure, of course, and I think he'll have to be switched onto the threat of that. And I think defensively, he's got enough to deal with those late runs. But again, we have to ask questions of our midfielders because of the way we set up to try and progress with that ball a little bit more. So possibly it could be asking this man to do so because he seems to be very, very good at it. It is, of course, Thomas Souček. The athleticism in his game is fantastic and it benefits this side, particularly in a low block. If we have pace up front and he has men in front of him, of course. Now, if he can win that ball, off of Gylfi Sigurdsson, and you back him in terms of his physicality against the Gylfi Sigurdsson. Less so Doucoure, but we do have 2 pivots in here. If they can win the ball off that number 10, possibly even an Alex Iwobi, Everton will be out of position. And I think there will be space in front of him to run into. I back his athleticism to carry that ball far enough to ask a question of that Everton back 4 and ask someone like a centre-back or the pivot to go and press. And I think in that instance, West Ham will try and create spaces behind Everton's defence. So there could be an emphasis on him offensively in this game. I'd back him in order to do so. It'll be tough for both of them, in fairness, and more so Souček if West Ham are in possession and we are trying to press Everton, because the low block that they'll have at times where the whole team will sit behind the ball and they've got that mobility and that outlet in someone like a Calvert Lewin. The late run of Souček won't be as effective. We've seen particularly against Southampton, against Brighton, their man marking and marking from set pieces hasn't been good enough to deal with his late runs. But he will not get that space if Everton are in their structure. Everything comes down to transition in this game. Everything comes down to transition. And even so, it have to be decisive enough and use the width enough to break apart that back 4. So there'll be an emphasis on them offensively in this game. I think it suits them defensively. And I back him in a battle with Gylfi Sigurdsson. I would say as well, I think West Ham's 2 pivots don't tend to back off and sit as deep as a Tom Davies will, or Doucoure or an Allan. And I think that benefits us in terms of not giving Everton the space and time that they need to try and create and find an out ball to a Dominic Calvert Lewin. And if we can force Dominic Calvert Lewin into deep areas where he can't hurt us, the really only outlet there going forward is Richarlison. So again, I expect them to go, try and win the ball, press the ball and carry the ball. And I think they've shown that throughout this season very, very much so. The contentious area, as always, is this midfield 3. Who do we play? Moyes, for me, didn't get it right against Southampton. Really, really didn't. After Yarmolenko on the right didn't offer the defensive work rate. And in fairness, he did work hard, but the lack of pace in transition hurt us. We couldn't get forward enough with the ball. Fornals on the left-hand side, I thought his work rate was fantastic. His defensive awareness as well from those positions was superb. I think it suited us particularly with that wing-back system that they employ, Southampton. This game is different because I think you look at those 2 fullbacks in Godfrey and Mason Holgate, and West Ham have to use a level of pace and directness and have to have players in the side that can beat a man to take them out of position. Very few teams, particularly since Carlo's employed this 4-3-3 and this low block, have broken apart that Everton defensive structure. And I think not enough teams ask questions of Everton trying to get him beyond and on transition. And earlier in the season, we were very, very effective. Less so, we've lost a bit of mobility with Antonio out of the side. But I think this might be the first game in a long time that West Ham have options to call on that can start to stretch the opposition. With that being said, I'm going to go left-hand side of that attacking 3 is Said Benrahma. I thought when he came on, he created a lot for West Ham. His ball retention's fantastic. I think he'll get space as well in front of that Everton back 4. Maybe he'll try and draw into a central area as a 10 as he tends to do. On the left-hand side, I back him to go and beat a man. I'm not saying pace for pace. That battle between him and Holgate would be very, very interesting. I think he'll tend to come a little bit central. But if he has runners in beyond, and he tries to draw a Holgate out of position, he can create from those deep areas. His delivery is fantastic. His ball quality, and we saw a number of times against Southampton, his ability to beat men is what West Ham need to break down a really defensively solid side. And for me, has to start. I'm really frustrated in not seeing him start enough. I think this game is built for him. I don't think the need for him defensively isn't required in this game. Otherwise, Pablo Fornals would suit better to that left. Benrahma has the impetus in this game to go and get at Everton in areas, in space, and try and find the right men that are moving in beyond. And that's why we have to have a really mobile attacking four. This guy deserves his chance in a 10 role. And I've praised Pablo Fornals. I think he was really good against Southampton. I know people say he was quite absent for the first half, which I think is a fair comment, but I think defensively, West Ham had a real job on our hands in terms of sitting a bit deeper. But I think Pablo did incredibly well in cutting out those switch passes. Again, I've said Iwobi will come central. I'm not sure Creswell needs as much protection. He has that already in the two pivots. So, Pablo, not for me, and that's why he isn't on the left-hand side or in this number 10 role. It is Manu Lanzini that I want in that 10 role against Everton. Now, Manu can pick that ball up. He will have space. And like I've said before, I think asking questions of that pivot in Tom Davies, where he has to come out and try and meet him, is going to pull that Everton back four apart a bit. And I think Manu's ability to link up with the forward man in that final third is what West Ham need. And I think earlier in the season, you saw where Everton had left a pivot in Allan and asked a lot of questions of him to go and try and win that ball. Space was vacated. Two centre-backs couldn't deal with the mobility in behind. And I think if we have a certain somebody playing, that can cause them real issues. But we do need that quality of delivery into him. And a look at Manu Lanzini in the last few games, I think he's shown a real sharpness in his game. His link-up ability, his vision, I think he offers that. And I think he was very unfortunate to come off against Southampton because I thought he was probably one of our better players offensively and we weren't playing in that offensive third enough. He will get chances in this game if we win the ball, particularly off the likes of the Gylfi, Sigurdsson and Doucoure. So he will get on the ball for me if he starts. He just needs someone running in behind or running beyond. And I think in the final third, I've always said since his injury, he doesn't have the same level of athleticism. But in the final third, he still has the quality. And I think in a game like this, we can see his quality in the final third. So for me, I'd like to see it. I think we've got enough defensively. We don't need someone to use their work rate in this game as much. Everton probably won't press us as much as Southampton. So offensively, he could be crucial. And I would like a link up with a certain striker. So right-hand side speaks for itself. Jarrod Bowen. Look, when he come on against Southampton, I thought the game changed. And I thought the game changed from a lot of perspectives when we brought the substitutes on because of the mobility in behind. Godfrey, despite being more mobile than Holgate, I think he's going to have a tough task against someone like a Jarrod Bowen. Yes, he will try and come a little bit central and try and, obviously he's left-footed, so he does play that inverted winger role. But I think his directness, his pace, if he can get in beyond a Mason Holgate, you're asking questions. And I think, you look at somebody like Mikel Antonio in an advanced third position, will make those runs between the two centre-backs that can hurt them. And you have to have someone that can get in beyond. His pace generally in that attacking forward is what will make the difference. Defensively as well, he's got fantastic work rate. I think at times, particularly down that left-hand side, if Richarlison keeps the width a little bit and Everton in possession, someone like a Jarrod Bowen could be used to try and push him back into deep areas where he can't hurt us. So I think he's pivotal in terms of his defensive work rate. He's crucial going forward. He's a no-brainer for a starter for me. I'm happy he got a rest against Southampton, but he has to come back into the side. I know people question the decision-making, but I think from open play, he will create enough, will stretch it enough, and West Ham can take the attacking impetus. So I think that's a decent attacking midfield three. Do let me know if you would change it, whether you put Pablo in there or whether you would switch it around in terms of position. This guy, I'm glad this is the first time in a long, long time I can actually put this graphic up. He's Mikel Antonio. I would like him to start against Everton. I think this game, West Ham can carry the ball from deep midfield areas. And I'd like to see Antonio in that final third. Again, the hamstring is a concern. If we're not asking questions of him from deep areas and carrying the ball, I think we're preserving him a little bit better. And I think with a midfield three that we haven't seen Antonio, in front of, they can carry the ball for him. We can see a guy that can move into those areas, stretch defences, play between the two centre-backs and hurt their mobility. This is the perfect guy. And I think in terms of his all-round play, to introduce a possibly Bowen moving forward, Benrahma going forward, the link up with Manu Lanzini in terms of his final pass, that midfield four and the striker is exactly what West Ham need in this game. decisiveness, pacing behind, when they all work together, I think we can afford to play in a low block system. We don't have to carry the ball as far. We don't have to take as many risks as a team. We don't even have to really push the back four up and exploit some of those weaknesses in terms of maybe Creswell's pace, Balbuena's aggressiveness. We're not asking those questions. That's why West Ham, for me, was so effective earlier in the season, because I think the pace we had on the counter and the players at which we had to do so, we weren't asking too much defensively. We could keep our shape and we could hurt teams on the counter. And I think having these players back, adding a side Benrahma to it as well, the directness and the delivery, it's a perfect game for Mikel Antonio. And again, I go out on a limb because of his hamstring injury. If we play him right, if he's not asked to play the same role that Calvert Lewin will be asked to play, which is come to each wing, stretch the play, use his pace, and he's really used in offensive areas in the final thirds to make runs in behind, he will get chances. I think he really, really will get chances in this game. I think teams haven't hurt Everton enough in behind this season for me. I think Leicester were a bit too defensive when they came up against them, or a bit concerned about the likes of Calvert-Lewin and sat off them. And they have sat off teams as well, Leicester, in the past few games. Chelsea, although they show mobility against us, don't really show it generally in trying to stretch play and having a runner in a number 9. West Ham do have a natural number 9 that can run in behind with players either side that can beat a man. I think we're primed to get a result against Everton. And I could go out on a limb and say that I've said that throughout, but I think we're coming up against a team that suits our strengths, that minimises our weaknesses. We've got the right personnel back in. I could be wrong. I think Everton are still a very dangerous side. I think if you give Gylfi any time, Dominic Calvert Lewin, if you make one mistake against Dominic Calvert Lewin, he will hurt you. So I think there are clutch moments that Everton can hurt us in. And I think if Everton get a goal, that's the problem for me, because I think against teams where we have to try and break down and possibly force our fullbacks up to create overlaps and stretch them in a low block, then there is that counter-attacking threat. So again, first goal was absolutely crucial in this game. If we get the first goal and Everton try and press us, again, I think you saw that against Manchester United when they're chasing a goal and pushing their centre-backs up. We've got the pace to hurt them. So first goal in this game is absolutely crucial. I am going to put my neck out and go 1... Oh, it's tough. I don't know. Do you know what? 1-0. No, I've bottled it. I'll go 1-0 West Ham. 1-0 West Ham. I say 1-0 because I think there may be that time in that first 10 minutes, if we're trying to be a bit too aggressive on that pushing that back four up, and they play that switch pass from Michael Keane, or a Gylfi Sigurdsson can pick up a bit of spot and Calvert-Lewin's running in behind, they will score. Open play generally, I'll back West Ham. If we settle down like we did against Southampton second half defensively, we can make it a really, really tough game for them. And there's no reason why they should be able to hurt us too much. Offensively, we've got men back in Antonio. Jared Bowen will be a little bit fitter. Lanzini's showing a bit of form. Benrahma, if he can come onto that left-hand side, there's a lot of impetus for us to hurt us. And teams, for me, aren't really hurting Everton enough and trying to stretch them enough. And I think West Ham have come into a right period of time where we can. I think we will get a goal. We will get a goal from open play, possibly Mickey Antonio, if he starts. And probably we can nick it. Probably we can nick the game. But again, it's going to have to be a really concentrated performance. I don't want to see lapses in concentration. I'm not criticising Craig Dawson because I thought he had a decent game, but certainly in those first 10 minutes, that aggressiveness to win a ball. Don't try and win a ball against Everton. Don't try and press them out, because I think the run of Doucoure, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, they will punish us 100%. They're not as expansive as they were early in the season, which plays into our hands. But don't take the risk because you feel that Everton can't hurt you, or possibly you have so much space in the midfield that you can press as a back four, because you will then give them all the opportunity to hit that ball and Calvert-Lewin will exploit it. So I'm going to go 1-0 West Ham in a positive final day of the new year. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've got this far, make sure you like the video. As I always say, subscribe to the West Ham My YouTube channel. I'm going to release a video as well tonight. I'm working hard on New Year's Eve because there's nothing else to do. Will be the tactical breakdown for this game and how both teams will play. It's roughly kind of what I've said here, but in terms of the game plans, the strategies, the general formations of play, and seeing how one or another in Ancelotti or David Moyes can get the best of each other. So keep an eye out for that. And until next time, take care.